Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to the CineFiles. Today, we're going to be discussing a topic which has been postponed for a little while because of our schedules, but we are going to continue it today and finish it up, conclude it, hopefully. It's Martin Scorsese 3.5. And today, we're going to continue off where we left off the last time, which we left off with Bringing Out the Dead, and we'll pick it up with, Gangs of New York, onto his newest film, The Departed. But before I begin, let me introduce my panel. To my left is Eric Cohen. Say hello. To his left, Jeff Galashaw. And to his left, Mike Foltz. All right, let's just begin with the Gangs of New York. Gangs of New York was a film that Martin Scorsese had in the works for many, many years. In fact, at one time in the 80s, it was rumored to star The Clash. Unfortunately, he could never get the financing. The film had to do with the draft riots, and I guess say a fictional story about the early gangs of New York.
Half fictional, half nonfiction.
Yeah, the film came out, and it had a lot of criticism because his original cut, Scorsese's original cut, was 4 hours, and then it was edited down to 3. And he claimed this was his original cut, but other people say it was Miramax who forced him to do this, make these trims. I don't know what that is, but the film suffered nevertheless. Let's start off with you, Mike. What do you think of Gangs of New York?
I loved it. I had such a great time with it. Matter of fact, that year I thought it was the best film. I love the storytelling. I love the characterization. I didn't think DiCaprio was that bad at all, although I did get to see him grow as an actor later on. I didn't think he was bad. I thought Daniel Day-Lewis, I want to say he got robbed for the, not receiving the Oscar, but I don't know, what's his name? Adrian Brody for The Pianist was pretty good.
Well, he won. He was Best Actor, and Daniel Day-Lewis was Best Supporting Actor.
No, I think he lost out to Jim Broadbent for Iris.
Well, whoever got it, I think that they didn't deserve it because,
No, I'm sorry. I don't know who
well,
he lost
some
out
person
to.
won it nevertheless. I will say Daniel Day-Lewis gives one of the most unique performances I've seen in
Actually,
a
he did
movie.
lose out to Adrian Brody. He did have a lead in that, which was very strange.
I'm pretty sure wasn't it best? Well, it doesn't matter anyway. He
remember.
lost his Oscar, but he deserved it.
There was no Oscar.
Leonardo DiCaprio got a
Butcher.
lot of criticism for being a very bland lead, as did Cameron Diaz.
Which I totally agree with.
And
I actually didn't mind her that much.
The problem for me is that Scorsese, like me, is a huge fan of New York history. And this film, he wanted to tell a story about the draft riots, which was where people were drafted into the army, the armed services, but they could pay a dowry of $300 and get out of it. And most people at that time did not have that much, so that meant immediately that the rich people could get out of paying.
And they showed that brilliantly, especially towards the end of the film, when the riots made their way uptown to the rich districts, and where they were, invading the rich homes or whatever, and.
But that's the problem with the film, is I feel like
Looting.
Scorsese was trying to tell two movies.
Well, the problem I had with the film, I think it's one of those interesting failures. It's one of those films I'd like to own, but I wouldn't say it's like one of his best. I think there's aspects of it that are just absolutely brilliant, and there's things that kind of fall short for me. I think the art direction is amazing.
I will say that.
But the problem I have, one, I'm a big fan of the book, and I was kind of disappointed that he focused so much on this love triangle plot that we've seen in a lot of films like this. It's kind of a cliche at this point.
I felt it was
and
very
didn't focus
cliche.
enough on the Tammany Hall politics, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. Whenever they got into the Tammany Hall politics with Jim Broadbent and
Jim Broadbent as what, Boss Tweed?
as Boss Tweed and stuff like that, I wanted more of that. I didn't give a shit about Leonardo DiCaprio sleeping with Daniel Day-Lewis's girlfriend and stuff like that.
What I don't like about what I do like about Gangs of New York is, Eric, as you mentioned, the art direction. In this, these sets didn't look like sets. They looked like real places out of history that were grabbed from
I thought
time.
just great scenes, just how he staged crowds and how he staged, some of the action.
I think his battle scenes were without match.
And I
think
love
they
how
were
the people were
fantastic.
the opening where they're all sharpening the instruments. And
I did.
has
Oh,
the
this
key
is the
files.
problem I had too. I was really disappointed with the draft riot scene was that he seemed to use the same extras in every scene, which I thought was weird. Like I was like, oh wait, we just saw the extra in the last scene. It didn't seem to cheapen it a little bit to me. Like I didn't get a what happened during those draft riots was far worse than what was displayed in that film. That's another thing I thought Scorsese would display. Like it like when they went to all the rich neighborhoods and just burned down townhouses and stuff like that.
But anyway, here's what works and it does not work for me. To wrap this one up on Gangs of New York before I ask you, Jeff, here. I think the leads are not very interesting characters.
You're wrapping up without Jeff.
What do I said? What my opinion? So I'm gonna give it. Wrapping up my opinion, and I'll give it over to you. And you've got a great, rich feel of this ancient New York. What I do like is I did love seeing David Hemmings and please, I cannot think of her name.
He wasn't in it enough, but he was good.
Who is the very famous actress? I cannot believe I've forgotten her name. The European sex pot. Either way, she was very famous.
Brendan Gleeson was very good.
Brendan Gleeson is good, and then you have
Great.
Liam Neeson, who's very
Liam
good.
Neeson was
A very
good,
brief
yeah.
role, and I don't know,
can't
Jeff,
remember
you're not
any
the
other
biggest Liam
female
Neeson fan.
in
No,
that movie,
but he was good in it. I was really a big fan of also the camera work by Robert Richardson in the film,
Fantastic.
which I thought really
Fantastic.
worked well. I generally agree with all of you in parts because I also like the attention to detail, the art direction, but the lead characters like Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz, that and the whole love triangle just didn't work for me. But I mean, and I guess I was personally pissed at Leonardo DiCaprio because I watched him in Catch Me If You Can, and he gives this rich, textured performance. Here it's just like, and he supposedly had dreamed of working with Martin Scorsese all these years, and he finally gets his chance. And to me, it's like he drops the ball.
Well, I'm
I
going to
think
agree
that's
on
more
that.
the director's fault. It's one of the few times
I
I
agree.
will blame Scorsese for not getting the performance
Well,
because he is an actor's director, and I'll say right now, DiCaprio has been amazingly consistent, and he's one of the most talented young actors. And if you can't get a performance out of him, I think that's the director's fault.
And that's what's so funny is because as this is the first of the 3 in a row film performances that DiCaprio has given, I'd say he's only given one really good performance, and then the other one is okay. The other 2 are okay, not as good
I
as.
disagree with that.
I
but
disagree with
But we'll
that
get into
also.
that. We'll get into
Lewis
this.
is brilliant in it. He's
We'll get into
totally
that
stole
later.
the movie.
But I think Gangs of New York is a beautiful film to look at. It's definitely one that should be seen once, but just for the beautiful art direction. And remember, there's no such thing as an awful Martin Scorsese film that's not worth watching. There's always something to watch in his films, and I think I can speak for all of us on that aspect.
It's at its best moment. It's a wonderful spectacle.
I wish he would go back
Wonderful
and actually recut the film, and really we could see what was cut out, and perhaps maybe he could fix a lot of these problems in post. The problem is that for me mostly is that he wants to tell 2 stories, and then he gets sidetracked with,
if anything, maybe the intimate storytelling details of the film were hampered by the insistence of Harvey Weinstein on the cuts, and this, that, and the other thing, and maybe that affected the intimate moments of the film.
Well, it was a $100 million movie, and if you're going to have a 4-hour running time, then you're not going to get many screens to get your money back. And that's why the film was cut. It's still 3 hours, which is long, but it was a 4-hour movie. If you cut an hour of a movie out, it's going to make a big difference. I'll give you a good case in point. Once Upon a Time in America. That's a travesty. That film is still a long film, but when you watch it, you go, what? This doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot of plot holes in the Gangs of New York, I will say that. A lot of ends that are unresolved.
I wouldn't say a lot, no.
Well, there's quite a few for me, especially with the draft riot stuff.
I just thought that was a missed opportunity to draft riot stuff.
Draft
There's a lot of
riots.
horrible shit went down during the draft riots that have been documented, and I'm surprised that Scorsese didn't go down that road.
And draft riots, as you said, is one of the most fascinating periods in history. I mean, people don't even realize this, that there was actually a whole housing tenement in Central Park with Irish and black immigrants, and they basically killed each other
Yeah.
for the draft riots, and no one knows this.
I mean, I'll give you a great scene that's wonderful in the film. I mean, you're focusing on what it didn't do, but what it did do is it portrayed that 5 points area so wonderfully. I mean, there's that one point where he's showing all the layers of like the gambling parlor and bordello. Or what about the scene where he's got the dueling firehouses that are having that argument on who's going to take
I don't
care
disagree
of
with
the,
you. When it's
the
good,
burning
it's
building.
brilliant.
It's
No.
When it's like I
burning to
said,
the
it's
ground.
when it's brilliant. But the problem is there's a lot of scenes that are not resolved, and if those scenes were resolved, it could have been brilliant on all levels. That's how I feel. But the thing that like you're saying, what about the things it does right? The draft riots, I feel he really wants to tell that story. In fact, he makes an effort to try to tell the story, but it's not resolved. And that's the problem for me, because that's the movie he wanted to make, and it's obvious.
I think it's a very dark love letter to New York City.
It is. And New York is a cultural mecca, and it's the most important place in history.
And a beautiful theme song by U2.
Definitely see it. It's definitely worth one look at. Anyway, let's not get too winded on this one. Let's get on to the next film, which actually is a very, I think his best film in the last 10 years is The Aviator, which was originally a Michael Mann project. But Michael Mann had to drop out, and he remained an executive producer, and he turned the reins over to Martin Scorsese, who made this wonderful love letter to Hollywood of the old days with this film, which is based on Howard Hughes, the eccentric millionaire who dabbled in, I guess you'd say, oil, and he dabbled in newspapers and filmmaking and
aviation,
and hence that's where it gets the title.
Crazy title.
And also his relationship with the real Katharine Hepburn.
And the real Ava Gardner.
And I will say that this is the film that Scorsese got robbed of the Oscar. When the Oscars came out, he got nominated for every Oscar. Scorsese, again, got nominated, deserved it, did not get it. I don't know why. Maybe there's a prejudice against New York filmmakers, but I will say this. The Aviator is so beautifully shot, and it has the best performance by DiCaprio in the trilogy of films that he did for Scorsese. A very rich and layered performance of Howard Hughes.
Absolutely fantastic.
A very rich, detailed performance of a man has obsessed with everything. He has OCD. He's just wants to be a very, I guess you could say.
But great performances all around. Alan Alda's wonderful in it.
Alec Baldwin
is amazing.
And of course, Cate Blanchett, who won an Oscar and deserved it. People gave her criticism because they said she was doing more of an imitation, like a caricature.
Well, she got better. It was an interesting performance because she's very mannered, very imitative in the beginning, but as the movie goes on, you see what she's doing. And you kind of like settle in.
Even what's her name? Boob job plastic surgery.
Kate
Beckinsale is not a bad Ava Gardner.
She's not bad, but I liked her the least.
Yeah. I did like her.
She's not, well, like I said, not bad.
And let's not forget Gwen Stefani, who actually, thankfully, is not in it too long.
Yeah, Jean Harlow. She was a non-entity.
She looks like her. She looks like her, and she's only in it for a minute, so it doesn't distract too much. But
you could tell that Scorsese had a lot of fun making this film, especially everything to do with the airfall, the movie.
Yeah, when he would
which
Howard
is
Hughes.
Apparently, reason why Scorsese made this film. He was fascinated with his
the theories of aviation.
His movie
Angels.
career. He just loved the whole story behind how he made Hell's Angels, and he wanted to sort of somehow replicate that.
I think that Scorsese could see a lot of himself in the Howard Hughes character, like you say, because
well, Scorsese is supposed to be an extremely obsessive person.
Just like Howard Hughes. I mean, there's some great scenes in there that really get under your skin, like the opening scene where you see a young Howard Hughes and his mother washing his hands, and you really feel that OCD. And I think Martin Scorsese has a little bit of that himself, because you can see that
it's well known that he's so obsessive, but that's maybe why he's such
That's
a
why he was a perfect person to
do
do this. And there's a scene where he goes into a bathroom and he keeps washing his hands until he's bleeding, and it's a really disturbing scene. Also, the aviation sequences are phenomenal. There's a scene where there's a major crash with Howard Hughes.
That is cinema history.
That is probably one of the best scenes I've seen.
That's a great sequence.
One of the best scenes Scorsese's ever done.
When I initially saw the film, I liked it, and I came out of it, I was like, I don't know if I put it on my top 10 list, but it's one of those films every time I've seen it like 3 times since I saw it the first time, and I just like it better every single time.
It's a good film.
I keep reassessing what I think about it.
The acting of DiCaprio draws you in. What I like about it, and you mentioned earlier that you said it was wonderfully layered, but the one, I shouldn't say one, but what DiCaprio does so effectively with Hughes is he goes from manic to enthusiastic to grim to happy to annoyed.
To a breakdown.
Constantly turns on that all the time, and it's great. You can see he's wonderful with these mood changes, especially when he's interacting with Cate Blanchett's Hepburn. I mean, you can see that he's trying to understand her, then he gets annoyed with her, then you can tell he's falling in love with her, then he gets annoyed with her again, and then he's fed up, and then he goes back to loving her. And he conveys these with all his facial expressions, because you have to realize that Howard Hughes is going deaf, and she even makes fun of him about that. But the way he gets impatient with certain things, especially with her family during that dinner scene, and DiCaprio he's just wonderful, and you really, really feel for the guy when he's struggling with his demons and with his mental illness, and that is him taking pissing in the milk jars and being trapped behind doors and really falling to pieces.
And that's another thing you could mention about his performance.
And he didn't get nominated, I don't think.
I
don't think he got nominated at all, which is a crying shame.
But you mentioned something. You mentioned something very interesting.
I don't know.
Well, there's something you mentioned very interesting, like how he had all these different, demeanors. You know how you see an actor and you go, what happened to this person? They completely change into another character, and it's just like he's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. This doesn't match. DiCaprio was able to change in all these personas and make them all consistent, where you believe this character is these different personalities. It's not just like happy, sad, happy, sad. It's all consistent, and it works very well.
Well, Mr. Scorsese archivist, what's your
Well, I enjoyed the film. It was I think it was my number one that year. It was definitely in my top 10. I really liked The Aviator, and I really enjoyed Leonardo DiCaprio's performance. This film, I don't know, like you said, it felt a little more personal, or like Scorsese was more having fun with this one than maybe, even though Gangs of New York was his dream project, this one seemed like he was at least a little more into it, but also maybe because he didn't have Harvey Weinstein breathing down his neck every 5 minutes for this film. So I really enjoyed it.
Now, don't you think it's like a big mystery? Because to this day, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, it is a big, big mystery to me how this did not win the Oscar, because this was the tribute to old Hollywood, which Hollywood loves, tributes to itself.
I think
and
it's
I'm just like
the
scratching my head.
politics of
came
the
out that year?
Oscars.
I think that he
I
has a
forgot
bias.
what
Because
it-
at the time, remember I told you, I didn't think it was one of the best movies of the year. I told you I enjoyed it, but it took me like a
But it
couple of
does
viewings to
follow
really
that
appreciate
template,
it.
what Hollywood loves about a film and what it'll give the Oscar
Wasn't that
to.
the year of the Mystic River, though?
No,
Oh,
no, no,
no,
no.
that wasn't
no,
your
no,
Mystic
no, no.
River?
No, Mystic River was beaten out by The Return of the King.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to remember
No.
what it was.
You sure?
Yeah, I was beaten
'Cause I
out by
thought it
Return
was
of the
Clint
King.
Eastwood who beat.
As you can
Martin
see on the
Scorsese
CineFiles, we really
for
don't do our research
Best
as well as we should.
Oh.
But
And what was it? Beautiful Mind beat out Fellowship of the Ring, and then Aviator and The Two Towers were out the same year, but they were both. I think they might have got beaten out by Chicago.
Yes, Chicago won that year.
A
That's
lot
what
of
it was.
homosexual voting that year, and
I
they had
guess so.
killed.
Which I thought
And I love
Aviator
it.
was better than Chicago.
and the thing I love about
Much
Chicago,
way better
yeah,
Chicago.
Chicago is filmed in Vancouver. Very ironic, huh? Well,
right.
let's not get too on this one. I want to mention one more thing. We forgot something very important. We forgot to mention the wonderful, wonderful, underrated performance by John
Riley.
Riley
John
as
C.
Howard
Reilly.
Hughes, his
Oh,
assistant.
yes.
He unfortunately
John C. Reilly's great
he
in
didn't
this.
stand out in the movie because of all the other famous people, but he was terrific and actually held the movie together with his
Just like
relationship
in
with
Gangs
Howard
of New
Hughes.
York.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I thought his performance was not as much as it could have been. It was very, very small in Gangs of New York, the John C. Reilly role.
That's true,
as
but
the-
I mean, he still held his
Well,
own
what about?
his
I think
scenes.
we can all agree he's terrific in The Aviator. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just.
Well, he's great, but all the little, even the little performances are big. Ian Holmes, Professor, Jude Law as Errol Flynn. I mean, these were all juicy little bits that were.
I'm gonna go
thrown
see
at
it again.
people.
I'm in the mood to see it again, so I'm gonna watch that tonight.
And
when
we
I get
hope
home.
you are too.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to the next film. This is actually, I believe, Martin Scorsese's first remake. This is a remake of the 2000 film, I believe, Internal Affairs. And
Cape Fear was his
Cape Fear
first.
was his first
Infernal.
remake.
Oh, I'm-
Infernal Affairs.
Oh, Infernal Affairs. Excuse me, Infernal
Hong Kong
Affairs, which is a Hong Kong action film.
If you don't include Cape Fear,
Cape Fear, I do.
this
I
is
forgot
his
about
first
First
remake.
remake.
that. Yeah, forgive me. Yes. Well, Cape Fear. Well, actually, yes, you're right. Is his first remake, but this is. I guess say second. It was a Hong Kong film. It was updated for Hollywood. It stars again Leonardo DiCaprio, and this time Jack Nicholson as the bad guy and I guess you should say Matt Damon too as a
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon as his would you say Jack Nicholson's stoolie in the?
No, Stewie makes it seem too Steve Buscemi from Miller's Crossing. I'm thinking more along the lines of understudy, protege.
Yeah,
Protege. I
Protege.
like
yeah.
Protege.
How about we will say this? How about his mole?
We'll
His,
say
his
protege.
mole. in
Definitely his
Protege.
mole, but
His
he
mole-
raised them to be that way.
Matt Damon plays a police officer who is secretly working for Jack Nicholson, who is a huge Irish gangster in the Boston section of Massachusetts, and
Without a Boston accent, I might add.
well, it works. And you have Leonardo DiCaprio as a cop who goes undercover to infiltrate Jack Nicholson's crime ring and to find out who this mole is who is feeding the top secret information in there. Alec Baldwin is a police captain. And who else would we need to mention? Who is
Everybody,
Marky
Mark Wahlberg, Martin
Martin
Sheen,
Ray
Strong
Winstone.
performances
Ray Winstone, yeah.
everywhere. Let's just come out and say it, guys.
One of the best movies of the year.
Performances everywhere in this film.
There was
from
no
head to
bad
nothing was
performance.
weak.
It
Nothing
was quite
weak.
possibly the most entertaining movie of the year, I
The
think.
best gangster
You know,
film I'd seen in 10 years.
I
since
was
Goodfellas
surprised at
and
how
Miller's
funny
Crossing.
this movie was. And it's a very funny movie, which is an odd thing to say about a film that should have been just a typical crime pot boiler. But it is so entertaining.
And I will The Cinephiles, we have a tendency as a group to repeat ourselves. Well, I'm going to repeat ourselves again. Alec Baldwin, every time he's in a scene, steals it.
I love the Patriot Act. Favorite line?
Well,
Best line in the movie this year.
My favorite was, you want to go outside, get a cigarette? Oh, you don't smoke, you work out? Get the fuck out of here.
And I got to say, too, Mark Wahlberg's best performance in a movie today.
Yes.
He was great.
Very good. In fact, I was disappointed when he came on the scene in Boogie Nights. I had high hopes for him, but he let me down time after time until I saw him
He was good in
again.
I Heart Huckabees, but that's another show.
That's another. But
Three Kings.
he's terrific in this movie,
Yeah,
and
Three Kings is great.
he's a great. There's some wonderful scenes with him and Leonardo DiCaprio in Martin Sheen's office, where he's just antagonizing him and really trying to rip into him, and they're just the highlight of the film for me.
And he steals the ending.
What's that? Oh, yes, the ending, which actually I want to mention is different from Infernal Affairs. And some people have criticized Departed for this ending because they felt it should have been what the original was.
I thought the ending was great.
But I like the way that you have a feeling that the ending is coming, but the way it's presented with by Martin Scorsese is brilliant. And I'm not going to give anything away, but I will say that's Little Booties for Shoes, which was absolutely a wonderful surprise and a great ending to a movie.
It was darkly comic because the whole movie is basically a black comedy, you know, and it was just like it got so ridiculous in its twists that it was comedic, and that was the intention. It worked. A lot of people missed that point.
The only thing that was missing from the last quarter of the film, when things started just escalating, the only thing that was missing was the theme song to Zorba the Greek. That was the only thing missing from that last part of the film.
I just like, and there's things like I keep repeating how funny it is, but the scenes that I just found most memorable is like when Jack Nicholson enters the bar from that back room. He just got blood all over his hands, and Leonardo DiCaprio has this expression on his face like, what the F is going on here? And it's just like so nonchalant, and he's like, oh, let's just go back and have a beer. And
well, what about when Jack Nicholson is asking for the final time to DiCaprio if he's the mole? He just keeps asking him, and he's like, I'm not the mole, I'm not the mole. Gets up, hangs around in back of DiCaprio, looking at Ray Winstone going like this. And finally, DiCaprio turns around, looks at him, and goes, eat something, come on, eat something, and like throws some French fries at him or something, and then leaves. That's like the strangest scene that has nothing to do with anything.
By the way, if Leonardo DiCaprio's performance isn't as good as he is in The Aviator, he's damn close. I mean,
he is good.
He's so good.
Emotionally
He keeps
textured.
everything like right here, like in the sternum,
and it's
about ready to
it's
just
a
explode
difficult
out.
part to pull off, and he pulls it off.
And he doesn't want to be the hero. From the beginning of the film, he doesn't want to be the hero. And you know something? At the end, he's the hero.
Well, you know what this reminds me of is we were talking earlier about the draft. And I feel, you know, people go into war because they have no choice. You know,
mean
they're
the draft
drafted.
riots or the draft?
The actual draft, you know, in the Army. And I feel in this movie it's kind of a metaphor for that. Leonardo DiCaprio is drafted, you know, literally into this situation to prove that he's not a scumbag, you know, because he had some family members who were in crime and they didn't trust him. But he had to, and the way to prove himself was for him to go undercover. And you could tell this is a reluctant hero all along. He does not want to be there. And the most interesting thing in the movie for me was the psychological aspect where you see him going to a therapist. You never see that in a police movie where the guy's really having psychological issues and you really believe this guy's going to go crazy. And just, you know, I mean, I love the scenes where he's trying to decide, should I go back or should I not? I could be killed tomorrow.
And he's sitting there yelling, you know, I'm not going to get killed over this. I am not going to get killed over this. Are you kidding me? And the stress that he's feeling, and it mounts. It's like you're dealing with
I have to
this
say,
human
though,
volcano.
I mean, and he deserves it. We keep praising Leonardo DiCaprio. Everyone was praising Leonardo DiCaprio, but I thought Matt Damon was good in this, too.
Matt Damon was good, not as good as DiCaprio.
Well, he has
Maybe
more of a
not,
thankless
but
role.
But he had the less, like, starry role, but he did really good, solid work. His part was important, too, and he pulled it off.
You know what he was good at? Slimy. He was good as a slimy character. He was very good at that. And it was
definitely the more talented of the Affleck Damon half.
Yeah, but
really
very sleazy throughout, you know, because you just wanted to reach inside the screen and strangle him, you know, because he was such a low life. And that was a wonderful, wonderful scene of the mutual picking up of the phones and just sitting there. and not saying anything.
Let me ask you
and
this.
then hanging the phone back up.
Let me ask you this now. The text messaging, which actually, is like a new technological feat. You see it in all these movies, and sometimes when you see technology in movies, it becomes very dated, hence War Games and other films. Did you feel that was kind of gimmicky, or do you feel it really played into the story? Do you,
No,
you
it
know
played
what I'm
into the
saying?
story.
To me, it played into the
Yeah, it made
story.
perfect sense. It was a brilliant use of it, I thought.
One thing, as somebody that's written a few scripts and screenplays and wanted to develop his own movies or sell his screenplays and stuff, I'm a fairly confident and creative individual that can feel like I know my way around dialogue and storyline, and I can understand this. As I was watching The Departed, I don't think it took me too long as I was sitting there going, yeah, I couldn't do this. This is really that good that this guy would write circles around me. I felt that this guy...
Yeah, the dialogue was brilliant in this
The
film.
dialogue was fantastic. I don't know. I would love to know when you get the DVD and you listen to the commentary, watch the behind-the-scenes documentary, I want to know how many of those scenes were organic, where Scorsese said, tell you what, here's a template for what should go on, go for it. And I would love to know, because some of that stuff really seems...
Also, there are
Really
two
improv.
films that were exciting to me for a very simple reason. What happens if you take like a director who has a canon like Scorsese, and you give him an opportunity to do like a commercial kind of crime film? What would happen? You had two examples. You had Spike Lee in Inside Man, and you had Scorsese in The Departed. Both were, for me, some of the most entertaining movies of
Two
this
gifts
year.
for
And
2006.
I'd love to see them
excelled.
do more films
Wow,
like
this show went quick. Well, we can say Departed was a really good movie. I would
Martin
say
Scorsese, God bless you. We love you, and thank God you're back.
I would say
Number
the
one movie of the year.
I would say The Aviator is my favorite of the films of his, the 2000 years, but The Departed is damn good and
Academy,
comes very close.
don't screw with Marty this year. You give it to him this year, you fuckers.
Until next week, thank you. Okay, that was
That
fun.
might have been the best ending. Be safe, fuckers.